G'day guys, how are we doing? Welcome to Walking Boxing. It is Wednesday, January 29th, 2025. And it's a little bit chilly this morning. Can you believe that? 2 days ago it was absolutely stinking hot. And today I almost had to put the hoodie on. Anyway, plenty going on in the boxing world, especially in the Australian boxing world. And as expected yesterday, of course, I did cover it on yesterday's video. The George Kambosos fighting Yordan from Indonesia in the big fight in Sydney on March 22nd. Now, as expected, the backlash came thick and fast. Hasn't actually been announced either, by the way, by anyone in Australia. And I think I said the other day, it was surprising that Noonan Boy and Australian Boxing Central wasn't all over it. But again, they are very close to George, and I think they've been told to hold the embargo, wait for the official announcement. But that hasn't stopped all the other sites from around the world sort of reporting on it. And as I said, as expected, the backlash has come for the fight. I think what it is not so much the fact that he's fighting Yordan. I mean, I think we'd all agree that in the last 3 years he hasn't shirked anyone. You know, the two fights with Haney could look the first defence of his title could easily have taken someone lower down the rankings than Devin Haney, but took him on, wanted the fight with Devin Haney, lost the fight of course, and then came back for another crack, exercised the rematch clause and got the rematch. And you know, we all saw what happened there, but came back again with that, it was questionable over Maxi Hughes, but he still went to Oklahoma, of all places, to fight Maxi Hughes, got the win for that IBO belt, and then fought Vasily Lomachenko for the IBF lightweight title in Perth in front of a great crowd. It was a brilliant day of boxing, that, over in Perth. So, look, I think everyone is in agreement that this type of fight's probably okay. I mean, as I said, it's been a tough 3 years, but I just think the fact that the announcement was built up so much, and isn't that the risk you run when you tease everyone on social media for weeks, promise big things, not just George I'm talking about, but the promoters and all these people around him, I suppose, or people that support him, all saying, you know, prepare for the big stadium fights back in Sydney, and this has probably just been a disappointing result for all those people that have been on tender hooks. And I'm one of them, by the way, because I've been waiting for this big announcement for weeks as well, because just to add to all the other ones that we've had recently that have been announced or might possibly be announced in the near future. And I think that's the issue. I think the fact that it was built up so much by everyone concerned, that now it's like, is that it? That seems to be the general consensus on social media. And one of the sites I actually like to look at, I'm not a big one for Facebook or anything like that. I don't, if I get on social media, it's always Instagram. I like that. But unless I'm putting stuff on my own business pages, I'm not really a big one for Facebook. But there is the group, is the Aussie Boxing The Truth, run by Big Bob Mirovic. I really like that because it's genuine fans who bring up different topics and they discuss them and debate them, whatever it might be. And that's probably where you get the real feedback from the real fans. There's no casuals in that chat. It's a private group, so you just got to apply to join. But it's really good for just getting to see what's on people's minds. And it wasn't just George that's copped it, by the way. I'll get to that in a sec. But there seems to be the consensus that George is that it. And not a lot of support for the fight. A lot of people saying not interested in spending the money on the pay-per-view. George is just the best you can do. I was hoping for someone, maybe someone different. I get that, but again, I just think it comes down to all the build-up and a bit of a letdown on Yordan. Look, he was a capable fighter back in the day, but I think he's more of probably a blown-up featherweight. Hasn't had a fight of any note for about 6 or 7 years since he fought Anthony Croller in England. So I think that's just the issue. But I'm sure the build-up will be great. The undercard will be great. So I suppose we can probably let it slide a little bit, or can we? Anyway, I think I think we're definitely, or maybe me, I'm just grasping at straws a little bit here. But look, again, it's a big fight in Australia, a big event, and that's all I worry about. The other ones, other fighter that's sort of copped it, which is very surprisingly, is the Zhu brothers, or Tim Zhu, and especially, but also his brother Nikita. Not so much Nikita, but with Tim, there was a post put on social media yesterday by No Limit saying big news coming, and probably right on cue. The Aussies, I don't like it, but they have sort of turned a little bit on. Well, no, I'm not going to say that. I was going to say they've turned on Tim to some extent. I'm not going to say that because that's probably not the case. I think now all Aussie fans, or most Aussie fans, are really scrutinising Tim a lot more, like they probably have with all the other elite fighters we've had over the last few years that have been overseas or even Australia having big fights. They've scrutinised them and their opponents to the nth degree, and Tim's probably always got away a little bit scot-free as far as being, well, Australia's golden boy. He really has been, and look, he's earned that right, and good on him. But I think everyone's sort of given him a pass up until now as far as the opponents and the performances and all that sort of stuff. And I think what happened, especially in Orlando, Florida against Murtazaliev, I think just like all the other Aussie fighters now, Tim is going to cop the scrutiny that us Aussie fans like to give our fighters. Not just Aussie fans, everyone around the world does it. But it was just interesting to see the comments on the post about the reaction to big news incoming about Tim Zhu's fight. Now, if it is Joey Spencer, and by all accounts it's going to be, I can't see why boxing fans in Australia would be laying the boots into Tim. I just don't get it. I actually think Joey Spencer is the perfect opponent for Tim Zhu. And geez, the guy went through hell last year, and I get he's going to get that extra scrutiny, and he's going to be probably held to account more than he has been in the past about the quality of himself and his opponents, and I understand that. But yeah, I don't understand the angst as far as Joey Spencer goes. But there was a lot of comments not being overly complimentary to Tim Zhu. I mean, No Limit always cop it, which I don't sort of understand because, geez, what they've done for Aussie boxing. Look, I've had my say about No Limit on numerous occasions, as a lot of you people out there would know. But I think overall, geez, they've brought the big fights to Australia. They've given all their fighters opportunities overseas. Not so sure I agree with that. But anyway, all that aside, and then Nikita, not so much him copying it, but more just in general. But yeah, again, I don't understand the angst, but that's what you get in an Aussie boxing, isn't it? And it was just interesting. It sort of caught my eye that, geez, normally when a post goes up about Tim or Nikita, it is just all love for the Zhu brothers. But that's the Aussie culture, isn't it? We'll build you up, but if you don't perform, we're going to rip you down. So I'm really hoping both boys can get back on top. I do agree to some extent they get probably far too much exposure compared to someone like a Jai Pattaya and I get that. But I mean, overall, geez, they've done some good things for Aussie boxing. They've really brought Aussie boxing back on a tidal wave, didn't they? And every sort of generation there seems to be someone that brings it back. It was Jeff Horn back in 2017, George Kambosos in 21, and I think Tim really lifted Aussie boxing in the last couple of years. And yes, he had that setbacks last year, but let's hope he can have some more big fights, and you know, he rides the wave again and gets all of Australia behind him. Well, just on Aussie boxers as well, I was sort of thinking about it yesterday, and I know I've sort of spoken about it sort of in the last sort of few months, or over the last few months heading into 2025, about what the year holds in store for Australia's elite boxers. And we know what's going on with most of them. A lot of them have got fights booked. But it's interesting, after last year with what was it, 21 fights or 20 fights or something, featuring Aussie boxers in world title fights. In world title fights. What does 2025 hold? And just looking through our big names, and of course including George and Tim and Jai and everyone else, it's interesting to see what 2025 holds for those fighters, and can we come close to even getting anywhere near what we did last year? And I was just sort of going through them, and you know, like as I said, a lot of them have got fights booked, and I suppose if we start sort of at the top, it's just a matter of looking at what each box is going to do this year, and are we going to see many world title fights not featuring Jai Pattaya? And it's a pretty hard thing to sort of forecast. I can't sort of picture a lot of these guys fighting for world titles. I mean, again, if we go through the list, I mean, if I can remember my top 10 list, I'll go through it and we'll just go through the names. But I mean, Jai Pattaya, I mean, obviously he's going to have at least one more world title fight for you. I would think he would have two. The fact that he fought January 8th, I think he'll fight 2 more times, which is unheard of these days, having 3 world title fights in a year at that weight. But you would think that he'll fight a voluntary next. The last fight with Niika, I think, fulfilled his mandatory because his mandatory pulled out. So that satisfies that. And then I think he'll just buy time for Zurdo Ramirez, who's got his mandatory coming up as well. And I think we'll get that fight later in the year, most likely on a Riyadh card, I would think, you know, October, November, December, something like that later in the year. And as I said, both guys taking fights in the meantime. So a massive year for Jai Pattaya. I think he solidifies his standing as the premier cruiserweight in the world, and obviously our #1 fighter here in Australia as well. Who was next? I mean, we talk about Tim. It's a long road back. It is an extremely long road back for Tim. I think he fights Joey Spencer. I think he gets a comfortable win there. I think if he's going to fight Zarafa, it'll be end of the year, but I'm still not convinced that's going to happen. I think he will fight a Joey Spencer-esque opponent later in the year. I think that will be the plan for Tim Tszyu. When I say Joey Spencer-esque, I'm thinking of a good fighter that might be ranked, but maybe not the killer that he fought in Murtazalyov, and maybe it's a top 15 type of opponent, gets himself ranked again, and then he can reload in 2026. That's probably where I see with Tim. I think a cautious 2025 for him. George Kambosos, of course, has got the fight locked in for March 22. I think he gets a very, very comfortable win in that one, and then looks like it's going to be the winner of Hitchens and Lopez, Teofimo Lopez, if they do fight, which on all accounts is going to happen. So if we sort of get past this one for George, it's a massive, massive fight later in the year. So I think what we've got to look at is further down the track for George. Let him get this one out of the way. Welcome him back with open arms as far as having a win, getting back on the world stage, and then that Richardson, Hitchens or Teofimo Lopez rematch later in the year could just be massive for George. So it's not all doom and gloom for George. I think it's going to be a big year for him as well. The other guys in the division, who I said, Jai, Tim, George, Liam Paro, it's going to be a long road back for him too. Well, not as long as maybe Tim, but he'll get some other opportunities, but he's going to have to get a win or two under his belt to get back in the ratings. And hopefully he will get another crack at one of those belts at some stage. But I've got a feeling that we won't be seeing Liam in a world title fight in 2025. The two that I reckon quite possibly could be in world title fights, strange enough, probably the best bets we have apart from Jai, are the Maloney twins. Now, Jason's fighting, what's his name, Tenshin Nakalsawa, I think his name is, next month in Japan. Now, if he wins that, he will get a world title shot. So you can almost pencil that in if he wins that. And Andrew Maloney has the potential to fight Chocolatito Gonzalez. Now, he's targeting the IBF belt, I think it is. The two Mexicans are fighting a rematch after the draw late last year, so he's got to wait for that. So he's targeting that. I think he's still really highly ranked in the super flyweight division. So if it's not Chocolatito, I think it'll be someone. I think you'll definitely see Andrew Maloney in a world title fight this year. So both Maloney's on the cusp of world title fights there. Sam Goodman, he's a very interesting one, isn't he? What next for Sam? Because he's not in the conversation with Naoya Inoue at the moment. When they said Naoya Inoue was going to fight 3 more times in 2025, Sam Goodman's name wasn't even mentioned as a possible opponent, let alone being on the list. So I'm not sure what happens to Sam. I think he's just got to go back to the drawing board, keep the ranking with a couple of wins, against fellow top 15 opponents, just to keep in there and then just wait his chance and hope that in a way he goes up, or he gets stripped by one of the organisations and he gets a shot at that belt. So yeah, I think it's going to be a tough 2025 for Sam Goodman. Might be a bit of water treading for him. Go down the list. Liam Wilson, he's got the fight with Yusuf Dib coming up. They're talking about world title shots for him. I'm just not sure where it comes from. I mean, Ashaki Foster, I don't think so. Navarrete, I don't think would be interested in fighting him again. Lamont Roach is busy as well. He's fighting Davis. So yeah, I'm not sure what's happening with Liam. Now look, I might be wrong and maybe there's something already planned or in the works for him, but I'm not quite sure he will be one of the ones fighting for world titles in 2025. I hope I'm wrong, of course, but I'm just not not sure of him. Who else have we got? I mean, the other sort of fringe guys, Justice Honey, there's talk that he might have been fighting for the WBO interim title. It doesn't really matter, it's an interim title, does it? So I don't think, even though it'd be great if he fought a timer, I don't think he will fight for the real heavyweight title, of course, because that's going to be held up for probably the next couple of years. But I think he will make big inroads into the heavyweight division this year. And I think by the end of the year, you'll see him maybe ranked top 5 or 6 in all 4 organisations and really put himself in a good position. Some of the other fighters, well, Michael Zarafa, I mean, who knows? Should I count him in that elite group? Probably not. But his biggest hope is probably that fight with Tim Tszyu. I really can't see him getting a shot at another world title. Sorry about that in the background, by the way. I've just Neil stopped out the front of a house sort of doing some work. So forgive me if you can hear that. But just trying to think of some of the other big names out there. They're probably the biggest ones, aren't they? I mean, I'm not sure Alex Winwood gets another crack at any time soon. I've probably forgotten someone, haven't I? But I think that's sort of the extent of the top line guys. I mean, who knows? There might be some other fighters that might just pop up and get a world title shot out of nowhere, but I just can't see it. But they're probably the sort of the main names. And as I said, like out of that, I think it's really just the Maloney boys that are probably, and maybe a Liam Wilson who might have or be in line for those title shots this year, apart from Jai. So let's hope not. Let's hope it's not a lean year and we get some other guys have a bit of a crack. I mean, the females are a different story. We've currently got 4 world champions: Sky Nicholson, Shanika Johnson, Shay Keneally, and Desley Robinson. So there should be some big opportunities for those girls this year. I think the biggest name out of those is probably Sky Nicholson. She's got some really big fights on the horizon for her, and seems to be the one that's really going to hit it on the, really at the top of the world stage. I think the other girls will still go about their business, but I think Sky Nicholson is the one that is going to rule female boxing in Australia for quite some time. So guys, what are your opinions? Any of those guys I mentioned or anyone else you think will get a shot at a world title? Again, I've probably missed an obvious fighter, but when you're walking and trying to look out for Neil and dogs and everything, Neil and other dogs and cars and everything walking around and people using power tools, sometimes you can miss a few things. So what do you think? Anyone I've missed? Anyone you throw on the list? What are your thoughts on Australian boxing this year in 2025? Are we going to get anywhere near last year's 20 fights? Give me your thoughts, and we'll catch you tomorrow.